Professor G. Anand Anandalingam, Dean Imperial College of London. Before I read out what has been written here, it's not 8:30 in my office. Actually, I got this note. I think 60% of that he removed it, right? So I'll only read what he has permitted to read on this part. But it has been a great learning lesson for me as the Dean of the school to interact with him over the last 2 months very actively and learning a lot of things. That includes the way to build a culture around the school and to guide research and also launch new programs. I'm sure my students are getting a chance in the month of July. We started planning for 18 to 19 students, but now I think the number is increasing. I don't know how to handle those additional 3-4 students who are interested to go to Imperial. Maybe in the classroom there is no problem, but probably accommodation is something where I'm worried about. I'm in touch with Dean's office on that matter. After these 18 kids wanted to go, few more have shown interest to go there. So I like to read out. Professor Anand Anandalingam is the Dean of Imperial College Business School at Imperial College London. Previously, he was Dean of the Robert J. Smith School of Business from 2008 to 2013. Imperial College Business School, with a focus on innovation, is ranked among the top 40 business schools in the world by Financial Times and top 10 in Europe. His faculty is ranked number 2 in the UK in research productivity. I'm sure that number is going to become big and number 1 in few days' time, as per my interaction with him. Before joining Smith in 2001, Anand was at the University of Pennsylvania for nearly 15 years, where he was a National Center Professor for Resource and Technology Management and a professor in both the Penn Engineering School and the Wharton School of Business. His positions at the University of Pennsylvania included serving as a chair of the Department of Systems Engineering and directing the Executive Master's Program in Technology Management. Anand is an expert in the application of optimization techniques to solve business problems in the infrastructure sector. He started as an energy systems analyst and spent much of his career on the information and telecommunication sector, working on network design, pricing, strategy, and deployment. Anand received his PhD and MS from Harvard University and his BA and MA from Cambridge University. He is a blend of engineering and management. That's why I request Professor Narasimhan from Engineering School and Professor Jaskiran from Management School to guide Professor Anand to dais and Mr. Munjal to join on stage for a presentation. I'll hand over the dais to Professor Anand. Post his presentations, his trophy for the students. I'll invite our guests to join on dais for that. Professor Anand, please.
Thank you, Tapan. So first of all, let me tell you that we are indeed privileged at the Imperial College Business School to be a mentor to BMU. We started this partnership more than a year ago, and our plan is to be continually present on campus, and also, of course, to have many of you visit us in London, both to further the students' education as well as the mentorship of our faculty, of your faculty. Of course, it's also my hope that our own faculty are going to use this opportunity to really learn a lot more about India, because of course we have more than Indian professors actually in the business school, and also to help develop some really needed case studies about things going on in India. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I also must say this is an auspicious occasion because business analytics is really what I've been doing for years and years and years. I mean, what Dean Tapan Panda did not elaborate to you, I mean, he said that I had worked on telecommunication problems and so on. So I always joke with my friends who have found this new thing called business analytics, that before the word business analytics was coined, I used to solve problems that involved millions of variables. I mean, millions and millions of variables. And in fact, my contribution to the scholarly world is that I managed to find some really beautiful heuristics. I mean, even though I call it beautiful, good heuristics to solve some of these very, very large-scale telecommunication network design problems. So it's very nice to be here on a day that you're inaugurating this business analytics lab, the IBM Business Analytics Lab. So thank you very much for inviting me. I must say that when Tapan Panda told me that to give a keynote talk, I asked him, what should I speak on? He said, speak on anything. Now, you should never give me this privilege because there are too many things I can speak on. I should say, you should not give me this confusion because there are too many things I could speak on. So I was wondering, what should I speak on? I mean, should I speak on leadership? Should I speak on, what should I speak on? So the one thing I should tell you is that this is what I'm going to talk about is something that I've been thinking about for some time, and this is this general title called Entrepreneurship and Innovation in India. And my talk is going to be provocative. I'm sorry, because part of the reason I've been thinking about this over the last several months is because there was a big congress held in Morocco on global entrepreneurship. And India did not feature that well. And so I thought, how can that be? And so I thought, we need to really think about what to do. And I went to my colleagues, and my colleagues, unfortunately, they don't work on India. And so hopefully this partnership with BMU is going to get them directed a little bit more to India. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that my colleagues have done. Now, if you don't know this already, we have probably the best innovation and entrepreneurship department in the world. In the UK, I keep calling myself an Indian American because, of course, most of my life I've spent in the US. But I could tell you that in spite of the fact that there is an amazing amount of entrepreneurship in the United States, that the department at Imperial College on Innovation and Entrepreneurship is among the best in the world. So two of my colleagues, Urko Ortio, who's from Finland, and Mike Wright, who's English, I'm going to present some of their work. And it's going to be a little provocative and a little bit controversial. I'm also feel somehow I'm bearding you in the lion's den because I'm going to talk about family business. And clearly, one of the things that is very clear is that you will find some of the things I'm talking about fits a little bit into what the Hero Group is doing, and in a very nice way. Okay, so which is so I'm telling you something that you already know, but it's important that everybody knows about what are the issues in terms of being innovative in a family business. I mean, the question really is, can a family-owned business be innovative and entrepreneurial? So let me start with something that really bothered me, which is something called the Global Entrepreneurship Index, or Global Entrepreneurship Development Index. So at the World Entrepreneurial Congress, they were discussing about the entrepreneurial nature of different regions. And my colleague Urko Ortio had done this work for many, many years and looking at this Global Entrepreneurial Development Index, basically trying to figure out which countries are doing well in terms of entrepreneurship. And the results were based on really trying to capture the potential for entrepreneurship by regions, by countries, and looking at entrepreneurship as an ecosystem. So it's a well-known belief that you cannot be entrepreneurial on your own. I mean, this thing about Mark Zuckerberg waking up one morning and thinking about Facebook, I mean, that's not the real story. I mean, you really have to have an entrepreneurial ecosystem that can help you. I mean, if you ever watch the movie about Facebook, you will see that, he was told, go to California because you are not going to succeed in Boston because the ecosystem in California was much better. You found people walking in and out of his house who had this entrepreneurial zeal, but that was not enough. You needed people with money walking in and out of his house as well, and so on. So what this index does is it looks at the entrepreneurial ecosystem and looks at what really drives entrepreneurship and what are the bottlenecks. And so the question is, if you can identify these bottlenecks, then you can actually then find a way to get rid of them region by region, country by country. And there are three kinds of things they looked at. One was called attitude to entrepreneurship, aspirations, and activity. So it's not enough just the activities. You need the attitude and the aspiration as well as activity. So these are the three major categories. And I will talk to you a little bit now about India itself. And so this is what the GEI map looks like. So the green is the most entrepreneurial parts of the world. So not surprisingly, the United States and Canada fit into this green. But of course, you can see in South America, I'm sure I don't have to tell you how to identify South America. In the United States, I would have to stand next to the map and point to where South America is. But you know, you can see Chile, that area kind of to the west is a little bit green, maybe light green. And Australia seems to be entrepreneurial. And then much of Northern Europe is entrepreneurial. The rest of the world doesn't do so well. The saddest part of this picture for me is that India doesn't look good at all. Okay? Doesn't look good at all. Now I'm sure many of you entrepreneurs in this room, and certainly people who come from entrepreneurial families, are saying that cannot be true, but let me explain to you. And I thought that cannot be true too. So here's the ranking. India does really poorly. Out of the 130 countries, now I've only shown you 106, 130 countries, India comes 104. So how can that be possible? Because we celebrate on a regular basis, if not the hero group, certainly Wipro and Infosys and you name it, we celebrate it. And the question is, how can India be doing so poorly? Okay. So give you some more detail. The purple line is the United Kingdom. Of course, Imperial College is in the United Kingdom, so we show that. It doesn't do as well as the US. China is not so good. Even China does quite badly. You know, I showed you China comes number 61, and India is the blue, it's a red. I'm sure you can see all that. It's possible you can't read what's in there. So India lags a lot of countries in aspiration and in attitude. Aspiration and attitude. And the question is, so what are these things, right? So number one, India really punches below its weight. So for every Infosys that gets started, there are hundreds of ventures that stay small and non-scalable. So it's not about individuals being entrepreneurs. It's whether you can be a scalable entrepreneur. So India has a lot more self-employed enterprises than any other country in the world. Okay? Any other country in the world. I mean, I don't tell you the honest truth. There's one other country that does much better. I think it's Mozambique or something. Right? Many people who start businesses. But that's not entrepreneurship. It's starting your own business. You have a shop, you try to sell something in the village, you know, you're continuously trying to make a living. I mean, and we are very entrepreneurially trying to make a living, taking care of ourselves and our families, but not really a scalable entrepreneurship. On the other hand, there are some bright spots, of course. If you look at where India is entrepreneurial, process innovation, very good in process innovation. Why? Because there are so many bottlenecks that we find a way of getting around these bottlenecks. The famous Prahalad, you know, the strategy professor, when he was talking to Dhirubhai Ambani, he told Dhirubhai Ambani, look, you know, you have to think about co-competence, and you're in too many industries. You have to be only in a few and have a co-competence. And apparently Dhirubhai Ambani said, our co-competence is process innovation. We know how to get around government regulation. So process innovation is, and the other thing is there's a lot more competition in India. That's a very important ingredient of entrepreneurship. Now you might ask why? Because entrepreneurship is doing something really amazing and good that can be scalable. And in the situation where there is competition, you're able to actually do that. But there's no competition, you tend to get very stale very quickly and stay small. Okay? So the definition here of entrepreneurship is, are you able to build businesses that are scalable and that can employ hundreds of thousands of people, that can really contribute to the GDP, that can really get India out of this low per capita income that we are in. So why is this performance not so good? Number one is government policy. Now I don't want to get into a political debate, but you know, I think that the new government has its head screwed on right in terms of entrepreneurship. Okay? Now we might debate about all the social and cultural issues and so on, and I don't want to get into the debate. So I can say that government policy over the years has held back real entrepreneurship. There's also a lack of cultural support for risk and failure. I mean, I'm at a university, I mean, I know what universities do. They give people a second chance. The one critical negative about universities is that the moment you give them a second chance, people tend to get very risk-averse jobs. Okay, so you get an education, you get a risk-averse job. You know that really doesn't help entrepreneurship, right? So there is a lack of cultural support for risk and failure. A colleague of mine and I, Vijay Chandra and I, we wrote an article for Economic Times. I used to be a columnist for Economic Times many years ago. We wrote this article for Economic Times saying that the reason why the software industry succeeds is because there is no cultural support for dirty work. Okay, so we have this, and I'm sure I'm going to insult lots of people. We have this Brahmin Babu mentality, which says it's better not to get your fingers dirty. But the software industry lets you do menial work, but not get your fingers dirty. Okay, so there is this complete cultural lack of cultural support for risk, for failure. If you fail, and that's one of the big differences even between the UK and the US. The US celebrates failure. I mean, if you fail, it's like a mark or a badge of honor. You have tried something new and you have failed. You get a second chance, a third chance, and so on. The third thing is startup skills. So this is where I think a lot of universities can help, because there is a lot of skill involved with really doing startups. You can't simply say, I have a great idea, I'm going to do a startup. There is a whole variety of things that are involved with putting together enterprises. And one of the things that we are recommending, and you'll see that very shortly, is that you need to bring people with startup skills into the country and encourage them to create these startup skills for everybody else, right? China is succeeding partly because there are a lot of people who have returned to China from outside of China who have this startup skill, who have this entrepreneurial skill. The other thing is high growth orientation. Now this again, I mean, I'm talking a lot about myself as well perhaps. We have this attitude of satisfaction. So if you are successful, you say, okay, that is good enough for me. I don't need to go any further, right? So we are, perhaps because of our Hindu religion or something, we want to be happy. We want to be satisfied. We think greed is bad. I mean, and greed is bad in a philosophical sense. But the point of going to that next level, that is lacking for the most part, you know. Then of course there is a very real lack of risk capital. And the final thing is, I'd say there is a lack of internationalization. It came as a big surprise to me because every company we are talking about is export orientation. But we are really only talking a lot about the software industry. It's only now that the automobile industry and so on has become globalized. But by being globally thinking, which is very, very difficult in India because there are 1.2 billion people and the domestic market is big enough. But if you keep thinking, and the domestic market is satisfied with things they get, but if you keep thinking globally, you're going to produce things that are so good that it will help the Indian market and it will also help scale. So, some of the advice that we are thinking about is, remove red tape, encourage transnational entrepreneurship, and I spoke to you a little bit about China's success. Need to really modify bankruptcy laws. So I tell people I understand India much better because I now work in the UK. Because the UK has so many of these bureaucratic laws and regulations that we have adopted in India. Doesn't fit our needs, doesn't fit our ability to grow, but we still adopt it. So our bankruptcy laws should be like the US bankruptcy laws and not like the UK bankruptcy laws, which will give enterprises second and third chances. Will give entrepreneurs second and third chances and not really damn them if they fail. The final thing, this is something that we are encouraging governments, both regional, state, as well as the federal government, the central government to do, is to really give a push to risk capital by setting it up its own venture fund, but run it professionally. I mean, the worst thing you can do is the government sets up the venture fund, and again, I'm so sure I'm insulting somebody, let this ICS run it, you know. It should be run professionally with light oversight, meaning you don't want to have 5 layers of approval before you disburse funds. So this is an op-ed piece that we have submitted to a bunch of Indian newspapers, and let's see what happens. Now I want to switch track a little bit and say, all right, but there are lots and lots and lots of family-owned businesses in India, and is there anything that one can do about this? So I told you there are many more informal companies in India than there are formal companies, more than almost any other parts of the world. And if that's a thing, can family businesses be innovative and scalable? In other words, truly entrepreneurial. And there's been a lot of research done by my colleague Mike Wright looking at family-owned businesses, because there are lots and lots of exceedingly successful family-owned businesses around the world. And many of them are entrepreneurial, innovative and entrepreneurial, right? So really the question is, how do different objectives within the family address this issue of innovation? How do different market conditions affect innovations? What do family businesses need to do to be innovative? And what are the implications for the survival and growth of family businesses? I'm not going to go through all of this. I'll be happy to, if somebody's interested, to direct you to the right people. But let me give you a few examples. So the two sides of a family business for always is, number one, of course, maintain family-centric interests, right? And the second is to ensure that you have created an evergreen organization where it is successful over generation after generation. Okay, so the most important thing is that there are different characteristics of if you do too much of one versus too much of the other. And the other thing that I'm going to look at a little bit is, how do you innovate when you are in a low velocity industry versus a high velocity industry? The cartoon here says, the board member says, we need to rethink our strategy of hoping that the internet will go away, right? So you really have to assume that the internet is here to stay, and some markets grow very, very fast, and you have to have a different strategy there versus a market that is going very slowly, right? So these are the four different things. So let me go to some examples to give you, okay. So one example is this company called Louis Latour. You may or may not be heard of them, but they are one of the most famous wine merchants, or let's say, vintners in the world. Louis Latour. I mean, almost every country in the world, if you buy any kind of French wine, you will find Louis Latour bottles. It's 11th generation wine producer. Can you imagine that? 11th generations. And they've been going around for such a long time. And they are entrepreneurial and they are innovative. And what do they do in terms of entrepreneurship? Well, they are continuously trying to expand new vineyards, new locations, but they're also innovative because they come up with new methods. And they're also innovative because every time they buy a new vineyard, they use the local growers' expertise and make sure that that's will innovate their overall company products, right? So they use local grow expertise and make sure that if it's innovative, that they will grow into that. If it's not innovative, they really don't want to simply expand. The other thing is they allow innovation by giving people long-term contracts and allowing them to fail along the way, right? So long-term contracts where the most important thing is not performance in a year or 2 years, because if you look at something like agriculture, certainly growing wine, it is affected a lot by the temperature, the weather conditions of that particular time. It's affected by changes in foreign currency, exchange rates, and so on and so forth. So you really can't have a system whereby you have very short-term contracts and expect performance in short term. And then they also find a way to use their funding in the right way. And finally, they have a culture of innovation in the family itself. So you want to make sure that the family members have the same set of values in in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship as the rest of them, right? You can still be conservative and be very innovative. And when you have so I was going to show this thing that says, if you're in a high velocity area like wine, you have to be an entrepreneurial innovator. If you're in low velocity, you can still keep an evergreen business by having a conservative strategy. And the conservative strategy is, you want to still go into risky areas. So your current business may be slow growing, but the way to be entrepreneurial innovative is to grow into new and riskier areas. However, you need to what they call ring fence around your current business, right? And make sure that the risky areas you're going to is arm's length. Frequently what happens, and maybe I'm talking a little bit close to the home here, enable the next generation to take over these new riskier experiments. Partly two reasons. One is it educates the new generation about entrepreneurship, really, makes them think innovatively to succeed. At the same time, it's a lesson, I mean, especially if the new generation involves more than one person, right, to understand the ability levels of what the new generation brings to the core business, right? And so this is a situation where the core business is in a slow growing area, and you can be still conservative and maintain that slow growing area for future generations, but at the same time innovate by trying to experiment in riskier areas. An example here is a company called HMG Paints. They're third generation paint manufacturer. Paint, you might think, is a simple thing. Hardly anything changes. It depends on how many houses are being built. On a regular basis, you'll find that house building generally is very slow. Refurbishing houses is generally very slow, especially in a place like Britain. But they need to keep experimenting with new specialty paints. So what they do is they have given all the new specialty paints to the new generation, and they are keeping and with new names of companies. So you'll find, some new company turns up with the new specialty paints that has nothing to do with HMG Paints, and HMG Paints continues to be run in a very conservative way. And the new generation company is also put into, there is a second level market in the London Stock Exchange called A. So you give the new generation challenging projects about new types of paints and new types of places to do the paints and all that, right? But they have succeeded over 3 generations, and the expectation is that they will continue because they are a case study of real success. The innovation killers is to allow slow changing sectors where you rest on laurels, right? Now, it almost killed IBM. Sorry to speak about IBM, because IBM had a nice core business, slow changing, which involves selling huge boxes for millions of dollars, and then sitting back and getting money through service contracts. And there were all sorts of things happening in the computing, let's say, industry. Because the current business was so productive and so lucrative, IBM just didn't change. Luckily, and there's a new CEO turned up who managed to completely change the business model of IBM. And so we still have IBM as one of the top companies in the world, but there was a time at which it could have just died, right? Now, it was not a family-owned business. So these mistakes are not just focused on family-owned businesses. It's really about how you respond to different market changes, right? I mean, in England, there was a company called Eaton's, which had the same issue. I mean, they were simply selling, it was a department store. In fact, England is now going through some of the well-known companies that are really in trouble, like Marks and Spencer's and so on, where they have a fairly slow-changing sector, and at the same time, they have not innovated, whether in processes, they have not innovated in products, they have not innovated in anything, and because it was such a profitable thing for such a long time, they're about to get in trouble. I mean, the biggest thing that's going on in the UK is the entire I would say, supermarket industry, grocery store chain industry, where there are fast-moving German companies that have come in, and these companies that are slow-moving are simply not going to survive. All right, I'm going to skip through some of these things just to get some lessons learned. So in the case of being innovative and entrepreneurial for family-owned businesses, it's very important to foster innovation across generation, and especially among have influential owners and managers, from a young age to get the family thinking about innovation and entrepreneurship, and welcome experimentation, tolerate errors, create a creative culture by meritocratic promotions and so on. The second part of it is essential to foster expertise, because there's no way, especially as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, to manage large enterprises just with the family. You also need a board that is consistent with delivering innovation. Now, this I say that even for the board of Imperial College. I mean, we really need boards that are really consistent with innovation. Also have long-term partners who share the innovation ethic or ethos, be adaptive, and co-create innovation. So, in a sense, the fact that Imperial College and IBM are here at BMU, I mean, you have kind of done what we are teaching. I always tell people we should follow what we preach. So we are really having partners who are adaptive and so on. And develop implementation processes that match different family goals with innovation demanded by the market, and then husband financial resources to control innovation and maintain family control. And also learn to abandon unsuccessful pet project, right? Which may be something that somebody within the family is really pushing, and give the chance to do some risky things, but there has to be a time. Now we are very, very bad at universities about abandoning pet projects as well, but this is a lesson to be learned for us as well. So with that, let me just very quickly summarize. There is insufficient entrepreneurship in India. We need to all get together and do something about it, but the government has a big role to play in it. And even though lots and lots of industries in India are family-owned, there is a huge scope for being innovative and entrepreneurial. It all depends on whether you're following good practices or not very good practices. So with that, I hope there was some food for thought for everybody in this room. And thank you very much for being a patient listener to my talk.